Lindenhurst is a village of 27,000 on the south shore of Long Island, New York. These are the people who grew up there and their stories. Everyone I know is from Lindenhurst.
Thanks for having me on. I don't know if you guys are going to use this intro or or what. If it's already
we usually jump right in, kind of like Mark Maron style.
Okay, cool.
That was the inspiration for it, anyway.
Okay, so yeah, that was actually going to be one of my questions. Is like, what podcasts do you guys like listen to typically, or to sort of like inspire it, or?
Oh wow, there's so many.
Yeah,
Definitely a
listening
big.
to. Sorry, go on.
I'm saying definitely a big Mark Maron fan. Always enjoyed his stuff.
Yeah, he was one of the definitely the big ones in the beginning. I haven't listened to him in a while, but he was cool too because he was like, not only did he know comedy, but he was like talking to Steve Albini about like Naked Raygun and stuff. So he had like a weird swath of like different interests and like knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. Did you guys hear the interview that Conan O'Brien did with Nirvana?
I was just listening today, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't finished it, but it's good.
It's really good. Yeah.
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 All right, then. Talk to us about your roots in Lyndhurst.
Yeah. So, I've been here my whole life. I grew up in Lindenhurst, born here.
And you're still here?
Yeah, still here, still in Lindenhurst.
Cool.
My family is Colombian, so they immigrated here. I was born in 92. I'm the youngest of four siblings. I'm the only one of my family born here in the States, whereas my three older siblings were all born in Colombia, came here. They came in 1989. I think they were like, my parents came first. I think it was like upstate New York, like Carmel, New York for a few months, Jackson Heights, Queens for a few months, but pretty quickly they settled in Lindenhurst. I want to say like 1990, like before the year was over. They were already living here, and I was born a few years later. But yeah, basically, my parents were immigrated from Colombia. They were like trying to escape. Just Colombia was like, if you know, at that time was like one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and just a lot of violence that they were seeing. And they had like a decent setup, actually. Like, my dad was my mom had like started a small school, like a kindergarten to third grade, and my dad was helping her run it. But he was also like a lawyer for like labor law and stuff like that. So they were kind of like, I would say, like sort of middle class. And then when they came here, they sort of started completely from scratch. Like, both of them, their first jobs were like working in McDonald's, like cleaning the bathrooms and stuff. And like my mom started cleaning houses. So it was really like kind of inspirational to see them, where they like, that was really instilled in us, where they like, I don't know, just a lot of hard work and a lot of like seeing the immigrant lifestyle. And my dad became a high school teacher, so like when I was older, we started doing better and stuff. But that was always really like inspirational to me, and that was like really rooted in us, just kind of like, like family's important and hard work's important and stuff. And yeah, sorry. So also, I tend to like go on tangents and overshare a lot, and like
that's great.
Talk about a ton of different stuff. So
that's
like,
good material. Yeah.
Feel free to like put me on like a track or something. And especially,
I was going to ask, where did your dad teach high school?
He taught high school in Long Beach.
Okay.
And
this is a funny story.
Yeah.
I think your sister Sarah graduated with me, and I remember in junior high we took a French field trip to see the Three Musketeers in French at Long Beach High School, and your father was there. And like, it was like a big deal because she would get to see him at work or something like that.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Yeah, I never got to see him at work. I think I went maybe once, but it was always like, I remember I visited Long Beach High School maybe once, and I forget where, because I'm not that familiar with Long Beach, but there's like Long Beach and then there's like Lido Beach or something like that.
And Atlantic Beach all the way at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he was at one of them, but I only ever got to visit once, but it was like this weird, like mysterious place in my head that I never actually got to see. And yeah, so I didn't really know, but he had an interesting position there, because he was like a bilingual teacher. So he taught social studies, but he taught in like half in Spanish, half in English, because I think there was a lot of like Hispanic population there.
Yeah.
And like a lot of school districts don't have that. So that was always kind of cool, I think, that he was able to like teach in Spanish and yeah. So yes, sir. So I'm going to I'm trying to think of where to so anyway, so we came to I was thinking about this with my cousin because we were talking about who came here first. Because my cousin, his last name, he's on my mom's side. His last name is Hanayo. Todd Hanayo and Omar Hanayo. Omar was probably like the year 2000 he graduated. Todd was like 2007. But they, I think, were here first, actually. So they might have come here like a year before us. And I'm not sure why. Like my uncle had a job out here or something. So I think that's why when we were kind of like in Queens and stuff, we decided to come out here to Lindenhurst. And we got a very quickly our first apartment, the apartment that I was born in, was like right in between. It was on Hoffman, right in between Wellwood and High Street, sort of like around the corner from Jimmy's Travel Service.
Yeah.
So I don't have any memories of that because it was only for a few months. But then we went like right around the corner, right across from Musicland. So the first part, I grew up in an apartment that was above where RST used to be, if you remember that. So so like the first
I was in there once for your sister's graduation party as well.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I remember that. I remember that day.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
You were like 9 years old, I guess, right?
Yeah, I must have been because we're 8 years apart. So she was like graduating at like maybe 17 because I think she's young for her year. But yeah, I must have been like 9. Yeah, 9. Right, that's the math. Yeah, that's so crazy. I very distinctly remember that day because nobody really came over our apartment. You know, it was very like rare that people came over. And I was talking to somebody else about this the other day too, because like, so when I went to that Silent Majority show in the one in April, right? It was April, the VFW, the Massapequa VFW one. One of my friends, Brian Tate, introduced me to his cousin, Matty Reynolds, and I started talking to him, and I was like, did you know my brother? So my brother was graduated 2004. Jorge, or he went by George, I think, also growing up.
Yeah.
But Maddie was like, as soon as I was like, did you know Jorge or George Duque? And he was like, what? He like hugged me and it was like super like familial and was like, dude, I remember you when you were a little kid. I used to go over the apartment and like it was interesting. Like he still remembered the apartment. And I think it was like I only lived there until I was 10, and then I moved to where I am now, actually, like on First Street, right near the library. But I remember like it was sort of like an interesting event or thing when like friends would come over because me and my brother were talking about it, and my brother remembers being kind of almost like maybe like my brother and my sister maybe embarrassed that we lived in this little apartment. But I think for other people it was kind of cool because it was like you didn't really see that much in Lindenhurst, so it was like, and especially like right there in Wellwood, like on the main street and stuff.
I've always been curious about apartments like that are just above like main village areas and towns because you never see them advertised for rent or anything like that.
I think the guy who owns most of them is still around. That guy John Bono. It says like John Bono Realty. Okay. My family knows a lot more about what he owns and all that stuff. And the apartment we moved. So the apartment we were first in was like a 2-bedroom apartment with like, and it was like 6 of us. It was pretty tight. But then the one we went to was a little larger because it was like, and this was what was weird. They were like, they combined some of these apartments that it used to be like 2 apartments and they made them into one larger one. So it was still technically like a 2-bedroom, maybe on paper, but like the living room was really big. So we divided it with like Chinese, like folding walls, whatever they're called. And me and my brother had rooms there, but it was fun. No, but that's funny because I really specifically remember that graduation party because we didn't have a lot of people like come over. So there was like a ton. That's probably the only time we've ever had like a ton of people in that apartment. And it was like exciting to me. And like, I always really looked up to my siblings, and it was just cool to see like all these like teenagers in my house. And to me, they were like, you know, like adults. Like thinking about it now, you guys were probably like 17 or 18, and everyone was like so big to me.
To a 10-year-old, yeah,
So yeah, that was cool. But no, the part it was cool to. But yeah, I grew up there from like age, birth to 10. Went to Allegheny, and then we moved like luckily just like 2 blocks away. I remember we were looking at a house in West Islip, and I was like super bummed and sad because I really loved being in Lindenhurst, and I already had like a lot of good friends in elementary school. And luckily that fell through, and then they found this house on First Street. So it was like we literally moved like 2 blocks away. And it was like perfect. I didn't have to move elementary schools. I didn't have to like
Yeah.
anything. And my siblings always sort of like poke fun at me because I definitely had a lot more of a, like they call me like spoiled. Because they, by that point, when we moved here, my brother was 16 and my sisters were 18 and 20. So like they were already going to Stony Brook. My brother was probably like junior or sophomore year, I'd say. So like he got to experience a little bit of the house, but I like my adolescence was totally different. I was like had a backyard, I had a front yard, I had friends coming over for like basement sleepovers, like so I was like skateboarding all the time in front of my house and stuff. So they always like kind of poke fun at me that like they had a little bit rougher, and then I was like, and then also like immigrant family, like my sisters were like always watch like anytime they had a date, I would go on the dates with them and hang out with them and stuff. Like one of the like it's crazy. Like to one of the episodes you did, I think you did one with I forget, I think his name is Nolan, right? Nolan.
Yeah.
Reynolds.
Yes.
He dated my oldest sister for a little bit.
Oh.
Angela, right?
Yeah. So like I remember them dating. Maybe it was, who knows, it was just for a few months or something. But it's funny because like yeah, sorry, just talking about like immigrant parents and how like strict they were. Like all my sister's boyfriends I knew because my mom basically was like, you have to bring Richie with you. Bring Richie on the date. So it was almost like most of their dates would be like, I mean, I'm sure they did stuff on their own from time to time, but like I would be like at the carnival like with them just because like she knew that was an easy way for like one, it'd be like, I could be watched by them or something, like if she was working or something, but like it was just an easy way for I think them to like behave because like they knew that nothing would happen if I was like hanging around or something.
Right.
So it's just funny because I have a lot of memories of just like hanging out on dates with like my sister's like boyfriends and stuff like that. And also like I was lucky too where I think because we were so separate in age, we were like 6, 8, and 10 years apart. I was very like my brother would I don't know this I sometimes I see like siblings who are really close in age and they fight a lot more. And my siblings definitely fought amongst each other, but like they never really fought with me because I think I was so much like younger than them. So my brother used to like invite me along and I used to like hang out at like his like friends' houses and stuff like that. Like not all the time, but it was like that was super cool to me. I remember he used to hang out with something else too that I think is really cool about your podcast, and even just talking to you guys now, kind of like is just kind of connecting all the dots. Like when you hear these sort of names drop or last names, and you're like, oh yeah, like I grew up with his younger sibling or like the cousin of that person. So like, yeah, that part is like super interesting to me. So I'm gonna just like name drop different names and see if
we tend to hover around like the same age group, so it's cool to have somebody a bit younger on.
Yeah.
But so what were you getting into as a kid?
So as a really little kid, like I really quickly, again, like with all those older siblings, I quickly got into obviously what they were doing, and like my sister and my brother would go into like shows and stuff. So and like around that era was like I'm thinking of like probably I'm thinking like the first album I remember really listening to, and I must have been like I don't know, like 6 or something, or maybe even smaller, was No Doubt's Tragic Kingdom, because it was like big then, and like my sister had it, and I remember like just like looking at the cover over and over again, and, like the album art and like the CD, like the I don't even know what it's called, CD booklet or something.
I feel like that album is an unspoken gateway for a lot of people.
Yeah,
like a lot of people talk about Green Day, Blink, but No Doubt. I mean, especially like in the ska world, I think that got a lot of people interested in that.
it's pop, punk, and ska all in one delicious little thing, you know. So
Yeah.
you get a little bit of everything.
And I was re-listening to, because like I haven't listened to that since I was a little kid, and I had like this edit deadline where I had to stay up all night, and which happens a lot, unfortunately, but like I was staying up all night and I was just like listening to random, like listening to a ton of music that I usually listen to. But I got to the point where I was so tired that I was like, I need some like weird random like nostalgia hits. And I was like, I hadn't heard that album since I was like a child. And I like put it on and I was like, holy shit, this stuff is still like still
holds up. Yeah.
Yeah, it still holds up. I feel like, it's like, and it's not very ska. It's actually like it jumps around to like
Yeah.
rock and punk and I don't know. So it made me realize like, oh, I remember I really like this song as like a 6-year-old or 7-year-old or whatever I was. And like it's interesting to look back and be like, oh, that's similar to my taste maybe now. But then but quickly after, I remember like third and fourth grade, my brother and I was lucky that I had older siblings like introducing me to stuff like that. But they were playing like, I probably got quickly into like what was big at obviously around that era. Because if I was like in third and fourth grade was maybe like 2001 for me, 2001 and 2002. So like, I don't know, it's like Movie Life and the Get Up Kids and a lot of like pop punk emo. And my favorite band was Saves the Day for like between like fourth to like middle school, maybe even high school. So like I used to love Through Being Cool and stuff, and I used to listen to Through Being Cool a lot.
Yeah,
I just have like memories of like our old computer and like LimeWire and Napster and like downloading different stuff and like scrolling through the genres and like trying to figure out, and I like just in fourth grade like, oh, this one's punk or this one's ska, and like trying to understand what was what and stuff. So music was always a really, really big thing for me. And skateboarding started up too for me, where I was like, my brother. So Jorge started skateboarding for a little bit, but he wasn't really fully in it. Like, I think he stopped pretty quickly. But his friends at the time who were skating were like, I remember he used to hang with Chris Littau, Jack Scotty. Those are the names I remember. Yeah, so like I remember they were skateboarding, and I think they kind of introduced him to it. So they brought him around for a little bit, and he bought like this Element Chris Markovich board, and then he just kind of stopped and wasn't really as into it. And I remember because of he was into it, like I had a Walmart board, and I would skateboard around, and but then I remember he gave me that Element board, and that was like what I rode for years, and I was like super hyped on it because it was like a real board, like with real trucks and stuff. And so between the ages of like from fourth grade to I want to say like I still skateboard here and there. I still cruise around and stuff, but like I'm not like a diehard skater like I used to be like growing up. And like, but from the ages of like fourth grade to like 16, 17, I was skateboarding a lot, like all the time, like every day. So I really fell heavy into skateboarding. And my best friend that I used to skateboard a lot with in sixth grade was Joe Dunham. He's still like one of my best friends. Evan Candelario, I used to skateboard with a lot. I'm just gonna like name drop people, and then like maybe people who are listening know some names or something. And like I feel like I got to shout out some friends if they ever listen to this. They're gonna be like, dude, you didn't say you didn't say I skateboard. But yeah. So
I'm gonna mention. Sorry, I'm gonna mention quickly. Vito's brother was in a Phil Collins cover band with Jack Scotty.
The Easy Lovers.
Jack Scotty and the
Yes.
Easy Lovers. And I was very good friends with Chris Littau's older brother, Ryan. Shout out all the Littau's.
Oh yeah, I remember Ryan. I remember the name at least. Like that's awesome. Yeah, it's fun to like realize. Look, I've been listening to some of the episodes and like not only how like small Lindenhurst is and how everything connects, but also like how there's sort of this like alternative sort of like lifestyle subculture that sort of just permeates through like all the generations, or at least maybe the recent ones. But like that was what was cool about listening to I remember Hugo's episode and then George Reynolds episodes, and you guys mentioned a few times like the different Lindenhurst hangout spots, like the Shoe and stuff. And like I don't think we had the Shoe at that point, but we had really similar spots. And it's like so interesting to hear that like different generations of kids just kind of like created their own little spaces and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, back to music. Like, what were some of the first shows you remember going to?
The first, so I was really, really into music as a little kid and in middle school and stuff, and that like completely informed everything in terms of like my interests and tastes and how I made friends. But I actually, in a weird way, like didn't go to a lot of shows, and it so like the first I did go to like a handful in middle school and a handful in high school, but I wasn't like a staple at every show, and like all my friends were. But it was like I don't know what I was like skateboarding or doing other things, or also because I think my siblings were so much older, so my taste was like music, like all the bands that had sort of broken up. It was like I
Gotcha.
wasn't really going to shows as much anymore, and I didn't really know as maybe as much as what was going on, like especially in that moment. So, and that's a little bit of a regret of mine, where it's like, but I mean, to go back, my first show ever was seventh grade. I still remember the date and everything. It was like I think April 17th, 2005, and it was at this point they were already getting pretty big, but it was Taking Back Sunday and Jimmy Eat World, and I think they
Okay.
played in Stony Brook, and my brother was going to Stony Brook at the time, so he brought me, and it was like in a gymnasium or something. So it was like it wasn't like somebody's first sort of like VFW type show, but it also wasn't like a huge concert. It was like somewhere in between, where they were
Yeah.
like already kind of, I think their biggest albums by that point were already out, I think. But that was really cool. I remember just loving it and like loving the energy. I'm always been like just an extrovert classically, just like around people I get really excited. I grew up my family is very into like salsa dancing. Like I grew up at family parties like salsa dancing and merengue and like stuff like that. So it was a very similar like vibe and energy, like being in a pit, especially a pit that's not like crazy hardcore. You're
Yeah.
like dancing and flowing. So that was cool. And then I remember we went to other shows like Crazy Donkey, like Ghetto Kids, Saves the Day. Like I would go to stuff like that. I was really into when I was younger, like in eighth grade, probably one of my favorite bands was At the Drive-In, which at that point weren't playing. I think they were probably Mars Volta at that point.
Yeah.
But Fall of Troy was like one of my favorite bands too. They were kind of a similar sort of like post-hardcore sort of influenced sound, I think. So like I remember seeing them as well. It was like Fall of Troy and Poison the Well. Um, and then in middle school, I remember like some Moose Lodge shows started up. And I remember, I think it was my friend Mike Giambalvo was like the first person to start setting up stuff there. At least the one that first person I know of, like in our age group. He started like booking shows there, and it was fun because he and his friends were like in a band called Mild Sauce. So Mike Giambalvo, uh, one of my other like best friends I still like stay in touch with, Mike Huniz, but we grew up calling him G Funk, Dave Lindari. I forget. Oh, John Erdman was another friend, but they were all in Mild Sauce. So I think he first started booking those shows um for his band. So like the first show ever that I remember was just Mild Sauce, and they needed somebody to open up. And they asked my friend Joe at the time if he wanted to open up. And me and Joe would always like jam together. So like I remember it was so like that was really fun. We must have been like in ninth grade or something at this point. I was in ninth, he was in 10th. And we like a few hours before the show, like learned some songs quickly on the guitar. I forget, like I think No Effect Sticking in My Eye was one of them. And then I think it was like a few other, maybe he even wrote a song. So we like opened up. It was just like maybe I think us two and maybe my friend Charles Erdman was playing bass. But that was really fun. And like that show was like just our little friend group. Like there was like no one really. It wasn't a huge group there. And then I think the Moose Lodge started. They started booking a lot more hardcore shows there actually. And I remember hearing about it, but I actually didn't really go to them at that point. And like I got into hardcore probably a little later. Like my brother-in-law who ended up marrying Sarah, Jimmy Caniglio, he's from Babylon. he introduced me to a lot of like hardcore music when I was like in fourth, like really little, like maybe fifth, sixth grade. So I was listening to like obviously from like Jorge and Sarah, I was listening to kind of like the pop punk emo stuff. But from Jimmy, I was listening to like Madball. I remember Trip Face. I really liked.
Nice.
It was like these are just random bands that I kind of remember in like sixth grade really liking. E Town Concrete, 25 to Life. So like he introduced me to a whole different side that was like a lot heavier, obviously.
Yeah.
But I kind of stopped listening to that stuff and didn't really get into like sort of the more like Long Island or New York hardcore style of stuff. Apart from like I was listening to post hardcore and I was listening to really kind of like mathcore stuff and um like heavy things, but it wasn't like hardcore until probably like right at the end of high school and maybe even once I went to college. So like my friend G Funk, who was a lot more in like the hardcore scene, I remember he brought me to like a Long Island fest in like 2012 maybe. And it was cool because like I was listening to some of these bands, but I actually hadn't seen them live. So like Turnstile at the time, um, which is crazy to think like how big they got. Who else was there that I liked at the time? Damn, I can't I can't think. They're obviously like the first band that comes to mind if they're
I
so
think
big.
Mind Over Matter played that one. No,
Really? Wow. Yeah, I would. I honestly probably
I think
didn't
they
know
did.
them.
Yeah.
I probably didn't know them at that point, to be honest. Like Silent Majority, I knew in high school, but I don't think I actually knew Mind Over Matter until I was a little bit later in life. But
Yeah. They
yeah,
were under the radar for a long time. But so you play guitar as well?
yeah. I my dad used to have an acoustic guitar. He still does. I play, and it's like the one I play all the time. We bought it at Musicland. Um, what was I gonna say? It's more a Spanish nylon string, and I remember like my mom getting this like CD at Costco that was like taught you chords, and I remember she wanted like she tried with everyone in our family to try to teach them, and she would like make my sister sit down like you gotta like do this or like make my brother make me, and we all sort of learned somewhat basic chords, but nobody really wanted to stick with it. And that was like maybe in fifth grade, I knew some or fourth, maybe a chord or two. Like, but then once I got into sixth grade, I was like, what really helped me was like ultimateguitar.com and Tabit. I don't know if you guys ever used Tabit. Like
Of course.
that was Tabit was insane. It like changed my life and like in terms of like learning guitar. And my friend Dan Stanga, shout out to Dan, like I remember we were in sixth grade and we were in Orion. If you guys remember Orion, it was like
Yep.
yeah. So it was like a talent show, and me and Dan were like we both played guitar. We both weren't like super good, but we decided to play a Green Day song because I knew Green like Dookie was obviously another like gateway album, so I knew Green Day for a while. But I just knew Green Day off the top of my head. I was like, that's gonna be an easy band to like learn how to play for us like beginners, and like I like went on Ultimate Guitar and just tried finding the easiest song ever, and I think Hitching a Ride was it. And I didn't even really know that song at that time because I don't even know what album that's on, but it was just looking at the tabs was like this is the easiest song ever. So we played that, and we actually had a little bit of a band for a second there, but it wasn't like serious. In eighth grade, me, Dan Stanga, Dan was playing guitar, Charles Irvin on bass, Melissa Larson was the drummer. Melissa Larson. So we were like in a band for like just like a few months in eighth grade, and we never actually practiced. We were just like hang out, and I had songs that I would try to get them to play, but we mostly just hung out. And then me and Melissa, the drummer, started dating, and she became like my high school sweetheart, and we like dated all throughout high school until sophomore year of college. But obviously like the band we stopped being a band because we were just like dating so like it never went anywhere. And also I was very stubborn where like I only played acoustic. Like I ended up buying a really like I think a cheap like Les Paul knockoff like Epiphone, and I had this like Epiphone thing in like eighth grade, but I just hated electric. I was just never like a technologically savvy guy. I just didn't want to like buy an amp and a pedal and figure out all this stuff. And I was always so like sometimes my friends would ask me to be in a band, And I would always be like, can I just play acoustic if I'm in it? And they're like, no, like it doesn't work like that. And I was like, we can be like the Violent Femmes or something. I was like always trying to be like, let me just play acoustic, because I just didn't want to like mess around with like buying stuff. Like I just didn't want to buy a bunch of shit. And it's funny because like if you look around here, it's like I'm surrounded by gear now, like camera gear.
Yeah, I was
And
going to
like
say your current profession requires a lot of
I
equipment.
know, and I kind of hate it. It's like it's interesting because I force myself to learn that stuff,
Yeah.
but I really do hate like technology and gear sometimes. So like, but the funny thing is like now I'm actually, because I really love music, and it's like my current life is like film, camera, cinematography, all that stuff. And I in a weird way I wanted to keep music uh like magical to me or something, like, or pure to me. So I never learned how to write. I never learned like how to read music. So I just like taught myself everything. It was just like tabs and stuff. But then I also didn't really learn anything about like electronics and tone and amps or any of that stuff. And like whereas film, like I treated it a little bit more like, okay, I'm gonna figure this stuff out. I want to do a certain thing. So let me learn how to do this stuff. And now I think that has actually taught me, like I'm older now, but now I'm like, you know what, I could do the same for guitar. And I really like playing guitar, and I really like music. So now I'm kind of I'm gonna try to like maybe play more guitar. And I was talking to my friend um Louis Cologne, and he was like, a guitar wizard. He owns like 20 guitars, and he's like crazy like metal shredder and stuff. He was really more into like 80s thrash and stuff growing up. But and he like fixes people's guitars and like all that stuff. So I started going over his house recently, and it's been cool. He's been like showing me his guitars and like teaching me different stuff, and I've been teaching him camera stuff. And I think I might want to like play electric guitar like this year. Maybe I'll like save up and buy one and like start to dip my toes in and like learn that whole world, because I just for so long never figured any of that out. And it's like, so yeah.
Honestly, I think that's the correct way to do it, is to get good at your instrument first and then worry about gear. A lot of people, it's kind of the opposite. They just obsess over gear and,
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's like, and it was fun going to Lou's house too, because like I felt like I felt like at first I was like, oh, I'm not gonna know how to play stuff on electric. And then like, because I've probably played the electric guitar like a handful of times my entire life, And once we plugged it in, he was showing me different stuff. It was so fun because it's like some things are actually a lot easier on the electric. And I had forgotten that. Like it's actually, so I felt like I had put the work in on the acoustic, and I was like, oh, I can actually like do stuff on this like a little easier. And then also it's like you start to hear stuff, and I was starting to like make up new riffs where it just sounds different on like the distortion, or your fingers are sliding different. So like it was exciting to be like, oh, there's such a whole different possibility of like writing and making new stuff, because I've just been playing the same Spanish nylon string guitar for like 20 years at this point or more. So I was like, you get like stuck in like one thing, and now it's like I don't know, there's all these different like things I'm hearing in my mind and stuff. So it's cool.
Cool. So at what point does the interest in film come in?
So I was thinking about this because I figured you guys would ask. And it's like, the funny thing is, it came pretty early. I was never like a movie buff, like watching a lot of movies per se. But we had a school project in like 7th grade, social studies, and it was like, I remember they gave us like a 2-page long thing of do a book report, and what type of, and it gave you different options of projects to do. So it was like a diagram or painting, or I don't know. Most of them were pretty like traditional. And then by the end of the second page, it said make a movie. And I got super excited, and I was like, oh, like let's make a movie. And I remember a lot of it goes back to, again, like my brother. I think he must have been like in 10th grade or something like that. But he and his really good friend at the time is like good family friend of ours, the Kajaks. So Justina Kajak. And my sisters are good friends with Agatha still and stuff. And but Justina and Jorge they made like a Romeo and Juliet movie, but on like a VCR, and it was for a project. I don't know what it must have been, like a book report as well. And I remember it just being the funniest thing to me as a little kid. I was like a super little kid, and they reenacted the scene where they kill themselves, like because they like, where it's like, I think Romeo drinks the poison and like Juliet stabs herself. And it's just like super funny because they're like trying to like keep their laughter in, and they're like and she's like stabbing herself and stuff. And I remember it just seemed like so much fun. And I think I even might have remembered that him like going over her house to film it. So to me, it was always like, I just wanted to have fun with my friends. So that first like seventh grade social studies movie like laid the foundation for everything. And we started like uh like all my friends, we just started making movies for everything, for like from seventh to eighth grade, at least for there was that, for any like book report or for any whatever. And it was super fun because it was like a way to kind of get out of like a boring book report or a project, and just kind of hang out with your friends and like make something. And it was also kind of like a surefire way to get a good grade and like not read the book. Like I wouldn't read the book. I didn't know anything about the book. And like we'd have like one friend in the group who would be like, oh, let's just reenact this scene. And then we would just like go make something up about it. But all those friends, shout out to them as well. Like Mikey Ficarelli, Aknuk, I'm trying to think, Craig Podzis. But like it was just fun. It was just like a VCR, and it was so rudimentary, like an old VHS camera, and we would edit on a VCR. We'd like press stop and record and stop and record.
Yeah.
And then we'd like show it in class, and then like Mina's grandfather would like pop up randomly like at a family party in the middle of a scene for like a second, and then cut back to like our scene. And it was just like we had filmed over like
some family movies. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like there was just something so exciting about it all, about like making these like little shitty movies, and I don't know, they were super fun. And then that transitioned into, in high school, in 10th grade, you're able to take media class, which is like at the time it was Mr. Carnivale teaching it. And I remember when I was because in ninth grade I had some older friends, like Joe was a year older, Ryan Cook was I think 2 years older, and Ryan Cook and Joe Dunham I think were both in like media class. And I remember seeing like the stuff they were making, so I couldn't take it until 10th grade, but I was super excited to take that. Then when I took that was really fun, and like all the friends around me were making really cool shit. And I remember like my group, Will Kennelly is someone who was in my group, Kirby Zumpel. We were making cool stuff, but it was also like I remember there were other groups in other classes, like you would see what they were doing. I would get super hyped on their stuff, and like that was like Brian Tate had a group with G Funk and Mike Giambalvo. And then my other friend, which is funny, who I like now collaborate with, but I didn't become friends with him or close friends with him until college. Chris Kenny, he had a really good group with Johnny Jazz Carr, Craig Podzis, Phil Santangelo, and they were like making really funny, like just cool creative stuff. And I had like cool camera angles and cool stories and stuff, but their shit was always so much more like, they had a whole kind of crew that were like doing cool things. So yeah, and I was always obviously into like, I guess, like music and like underground and like alternative things. So I remember like there's a few movies that stick out to me that I remember really loving. And I was hanging out at Joe's house once in like middle school, and I think it was his sister, Kate Dunham, suggested we watch Elephant. And we must have been like in 7th or 8th grade or something at this point. I remember watching it like that's like one of the first.
I was talking about that movie literally like 20 minutes before we did this today with
my
friend Phil. Insane. But
yeah. That's one of my favorite movies, and it's still to this day like, and it's weird because like I watched it maybe in 7th or 8th grade, which is like thinking back like really early to watch it. It was like
yeah, it's a little bit harsh subject matter.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. And then I didn't like revisit it until college maybe, but it like stayed in my brain. Like I just would think of the way it was shot, and like I'd thought, and the thing that I loved about it especially at that age, is like that everyone felt real. Like everyone, and when you read more about it, it's like they were real. They were all non-actors, and they were all real kids that like Gus Van Sant casted and stuff. And um yeah, so like I remember I there were certain films that I really liked, but I wasn't like necessarily like a movie buff. You know, I wasn't like watching movies all the time or something. And I liked making them with friends. And to so then when it came to apply for schools, apply for college, I was like, I was I was a good student. I was like fortunate that like school came sort of easily to me, and I had good grades and stuff. And but I remember really thinking I didn't want to go to college, and I knew that kind of shouldn't do that because like my family had worked so hard, like kind of like everything I told you before, and I knew that they were maybe looking to me to like I wanted to like make them proud and like go to a school. And so I was like fuck, like what do I even want to do? Like I don't want to go to college. I don't want to like go. And so I remember it was like I had to apply to colleges, and it was like the final few days or something that everything was due. And I was like, and they just kind of came to me. I was like, I want to do film. I was like, I want to make movies. I was like, that's the only thing I can imagine, like not getting bored of, and like actually doing for the rest of my life and just having fun. And it was, yeah, just like thinking back to like making shit with friends. So, I applied to a few schools. I applied to some public schools, Stony Brook, Binghamton, I think Purchase maybe. Um, and then I applied to, and then I was like, let me do two private schools. And I was like trying to see like what's a good film school. I was still maybe not sure I wanted to do film. So obviously like NYU is the big one that everyone knows of. But I was like, I kind of want to go further away. And like I was like, I don't know if I even have anything in my portfolio to like really get into NYU. So I was like, let me look at a school that I could get into that's good for like liberal arts. So if I still just want to do like a general liberal arts thing, I could do that, but still has a decent program. So then the two were Syracuse and Boston University. I got into all of them, and Syracuse was my top choice. Like visited, so I really loved it. Then I visited, and I was like, oh man, I was like, it's gonna be depressing here. It was like I got there and it was like late April, and it was like snowy everywhere and cold still. And I was like, oh my god, dude, it's gonna be freezing here. And it's also like a big party school, and I'm not a and like a sports school. And I played soccer growing up, but I never followed sports, never watched sports. I was also basically like straight edge. I never really claimed it, but I was like, I never drank until I was like maybe in college. And even then I would have like a drink. Like even now I don't really, I'm still be kind of straight edge, but without ever really like claiming it. Like don't smoke, don't, I'll have a drink here and there. But anyway, I was like, I don't want to go to a party school. Like I'm not going to drink at all. I don't want to be around this stuff. So then I visited Boston, and that was like a really cool. That was really cool because it was actually like within a city, and there was stuff going on, and it seemed like I don't know, it just seemed a lot more exciting. So I ended up going to Boston University. Um, I'm happy I went, but anyway, long story short, it was like to me, it was like the worst financial mistake of my life. Just like so much debt, just not worth it. Didn't teach me like much anything. The thing that it did help me with though a lot, I'll say, is like um it helped me with a few things. One, it like introduced me to a kind of a different class of people that were like getting internships and traveling to Europe and like doing all this crazy shit. And like it kind of like pushed me to like think in their shoes and be like, I want to do stuff. I want to like push myself as well. Um so and there's also kind of a healthy competition in that. So uh I made a short film while I was there, and it was totally outside of school. Like nobody that was the thing too, was good in that regard, but also like a lot of people didn't have this sort of maybe like DIY kind of like punk sort of or like working class, middle class like ethics that maybe had. So like I made a whole short film my final year there, totally outside of school. I was like taking equipment out through like where I wasn't allowed to. Like it was so ludicrous to me. Like we weren't allowed to take out film equipment in a film school, and I was paying like tens of thousands of dollars. And that's a whole different story. Like I almost got in trouble and they like threatened to like kick me out and shit. It was so stupid. I was like, you should be like proud that I'm trying to make something here. But anyway, the people who ended up helping me were like Chris Kenny, who also grew up, went in Lindenhurst my whole life. I ended up, we became friends after high school, and he had also done like media class. I convinced him he was going to Geneseo at the time, and he was like really intelligent. He was one of the few kids of our school, I think, who got into like Columbia, and then ended up not going because he couldn't afford it. So he went to Geneseo, and then he just like hated Geneseo, and I was like convinced him to transfer to BU. So he transferred to BU his second year or his third year. His third year, I think he came, which was my final year, and then we started like, and he's a lot better of a writer than I am, so that was like the first time we started collaborating, and he started we started co-writing this movie together, and I shot it and stuff, and then he acted in it, and then we recruited and then G Funk, my friend Mike Cunes, was going to school at the time at Brooklyn College, and he, like God bless him, was the other actor in it, and he would come up every single weekend, take like a $15 like megabus, and just like come up and crash on our floor. And for like months, we made a movie like that together, and it was cool because it was like at first I had some crew from BU, and some of them did help out, some of them did whatever, but at a certain point, like everyone pretty much dropped off, and it was just me, Chris Kenny, and G Funk. And then I remember like the best scene that we did, we had to like film during, I forget what it was, like spring break maybe. And Joe and another one of my friends, like we went back home and filmed it back home and just pretended it was Boston. And Joe, I think, did the sound like he held a boom. But that was like also one of the first moments where it was like, it felt like a return to sort of how I was making movies, of like with friends in middle school, high school. And it also just showed me like, oh, like this is the best scene. Like a lot of the other stuff with that movie, I think is a little, like there's parts I'm proud of. But like, there's parts that aren't that great. And that scene I think is still like a pretty decent scene. And it's like the one that was just like all Lindenhurst friends, like in Lindenhurst, like filming stuff. So it was like cool. It like showed to me like, you can just do stuff with your friends and like keep it small and keep it intimate. And that's the best stuff. So
what was that movie about?
That one was called, that one was Sync, and it follows three friends who they live in the Boston area and they don't have enough money to go to college. So instead they go to college parties and pickpocket kids to make money. And one of them in the very beginning gets arrested, and then they have to try to bail him out. So the whole rest of the movie is trying to figure out how to bail him out. And those two friends are Chris and G Funk. But it gets to like kind of more, it kind of subverts kind of like crime dramas, and like it tries to kind of, it deals a lot more with like loneliness, and is a little more like existential, because like the Chris character is like not really into this and doesn't want to be doing this, and like the G Funk character, they had different names I think in the movie, but like is like kind of questioning him, and like, so it was interesting. It's like I was proud of that one, and it came from also like looking at the movies that my friends or like kids in my class were making, and like I think college movies are very like they're guilty of kind of just like, I don't know, they have all these tropes where it's like somebody doing drugs or some gangsters, and it's like and it's like a lot of them don't make sense because it's like a gangster movie, but they're like 19-year-olds acting as like as like like a Martin Scorsese gangster film, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. What is so like that was also kind of the first movie where I was like trying to write from what I had, like resources. I was like, what is a movie that would actually make sense in the world that we are in, like sort of college aged kids, and also like a lot of it also came from a little bit of like that outsider feeling where I didn't really like, I liked BU in some aspects, but I also definitely felt like an outsider. Like I felt like I didn't really fit in there. And so like I would look around and I felt more, I don't know, like the workers who were working there, I felt more in like, what's the word for it? Like connected to. So I was like, what are the people who like actually work at this school? Like, what are their lives like? What are their like? I felt like I was in a little bubble. Like BU is very kind of like a bubble, and then like the actual city is just like a block away. You can just walk to it and you see like, quote unquote real people, or in the way I describe it.
That was smart of you though at that time to like just write about what you know. And that's what makes it relatable, is because you can tell that it's coming through, that it's actually real, and it's from real experience.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. So yeah, that was cool. That was the first little short I ever did. I didn't so the my biggest I'm most guilty of like I make stuff and then never send it or submit it or show it anywhere. So I made that and just never showed anything. Never showed anything.
That was my next question, is where can we see it?
I mean it's on, I think the full link is online. And the other thing that I'm guilty of is like going on too long. So these were short films, and as I came to learn later, and like I think I can talk about that, because like maybe the most interesting thing about me all my life is that I went to film festivals for a while. And as I came to learn later, in film festivals, it's like, a film is going to do better if it's like 15 minutes long or 10 minutes long. That first movie was maybe 27 or 32 minutes long. It was like a full like little mini feature.
Okay.
And like film festivals aren't going to program something that long. So I didn't even try to submit anywhere, but we have a DVD. We made DVDs. We like gave it out to people, like friends and stuff who worked on it. We did a little screening in Boston actually the next year. So like we played it up there for like everyone who worked on it. So that was cool. It was like and it also it really showed me like that's what I want to do, because at the same time, I got an internship in 2012 when I was at BU, which I guess was like my sophomore year. I got an internship at the Cannes Film Festival. And the Cannes Film Festival, if you don't know, is like the largest film festival in the world. So it's like it's in Cannes, the south of France, and I got an internship working for William Morris Endeavor, which is like a talent agency, and I worked there for like 2 weeks at the festival, and that I think is probably one of the like single-handedly, like, apart from maybe making the film as well, it's like really taught me about the industry, and you just really get a sort of understanding and a cross section of all the different facets of the industry right there. And like Cannes, for instance, like to give context for like those who maybe don't know, it's like Cannes is where like Pulp Fiction first played and premiered, right? And like ends up like I think winning the best award there. And Cannes is where like, I don't know, that's like the most famous one I can think of. I don't know, Apocalypse.
Is that
Now.
the Palme d'Or or whatever?
Yeah.
Is that what they? Yeah.
Yeah, Apocalypse Now won their, more recent movies, maybe Good Time, the Safdie brothers movie. But anyway, it's a big festival, and the cool thing about it is it showed me like all the different facets of the industry you kind of understand at a film festival. Because like you can work in production, you can be a PA on a film set, right? But you only really understand production. And this kind of showed me that like, a film gets made, it premieres at a festival. Sometimes the film doesn't have distribution, so like that's where it's purchased and bought.
Gotcha.
So like then they put it out into distribution. So a lot of the films, at least the indie films, sometimes may not even have any distribution. So like a film premieres at Cannes, does well, runs an award, or all the press is writing about it. So then a company, the big names back in the day were like, Miramax and stuff, like for indie acquisitions, would like purchase it off how well it did at like Sundance or whatever. Like, that's the classic story of stuff, some of the stuff like that we all know, like a Clerks or something like that. Yeah. Clerks does really well at Sundance. It's a totally indie movie that he just did on it with his own money, but then somebody buys it and then puts it into theaters. And they purchase it for a certain amount of money, and then they're able to make the money on the actual what the theater does. So like that's sort of like the purchasing aspect of it. So it taught me like all the different facets of the industry, and it also taught me like, so like I did an internship with that talent agency, and it showed me like through osmosis I learned a lot of things, but it also showed me that I didn't really want to work on, like I was just basically a glorified assistant. I was running around doing different shit. And the talent agency world, I've never watched this show, but the agency I was working for is based off of Entourage, like off of like the guy who started the agency, or like not the founder, but like the president of my agency or whatever. So it's like kind of
Ari, whatever his name
Ari Emanuel, I think. So
yeah,
like
he owns the UFC now or whatever, that company that bought them. But
okay,
I think
yeah,
William Morris Endeavor bought UFC and WWE or something like that.
yeah. So William
Yeah.
Morris Endeavor, I think, merged with IMG, and then and then they became a huge company. And then they've like bought everything up, and yeah,
Right.
it's insane. I used to follow it a lot more. I don't follow it as much, but anyway, what I'm getting at is like it taught me that I want to work in the film industry, but I didn't really like. Cannes is also known for like the glitz and glamour. It's like where all the celebrities are. There's like rich people on yachts partying and stuff like that. And a lot of that side got me really kind of like just sick. And it was like I was like, oh, this is so fucking stupid and boring. And like I just hated it. It was so much like a dick measuring contest and just people bragging about like how wealthy they are. Um and I could have possibly like gotten a job out of college with that agency in LA. And that was sort of maybe part of the idea for a while, was like, oh, like, you know, go to LA, get a job there, or go to New York and get like a job with a company. Cause that's kind of like I thought how you did it. But what that like doing that festival, and then very soon after we made Sync, my first short film, like it kind of showed me really clearly that like, okay, like I don't want to work in film. I want to like make film. And it's a very different thing. It's like, and it's probably somewhere like to you guys with a better knowledge in music. It's like, if you want to make music or be in a band, it's like you just make it, you just do it.
Yeah.
Whereas like working in the music industry is like a very different thing. Like you could work in the music industry, but you know, you might go work at a label or work different place. And it's cool.
Selling something and making something are different things. Where art and commerce meet, it's usually not the best situation.
Yeah. And you know, there's like a place and a life for that. So it's like some people, you can build a stable life for yourself, and you can be like working at a record label, or you can be working at a big film company, and you know, you can like raise a family and do all these things and be there and have, you know, and actually be a part of it, and like actually maybe manage someone or help someone's career out. So I think there's obviously like there's a lot of positivity in that stuff, and it's like I don't look down upon it. But I just realized it wasn't for me. I was like, oh, like there's no real like I can't start at the bottom and like work my way up to being a director. You know, I was like, I kind of just have to make shit. Like I realized I was like, I just have to figure it out.
I mean, you mentioned Kevin Smith, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah.
He didn't wait for anyone, he just did it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so there was a lot of, so it was like a mixture of like, I was going to be graduating college soon. I graduated in 2013. So it was like a mixture of like doing that first short, doing Sync. And there was a third thing I was going to say. Oh, and also a professor I started taking, which I really respected. Like out of everything that BU, like they didn't really teach me a lot in film at all. Like it was like I learned it all through YouTube, but BU did teach me at least. Like there was this professor there, Ray Carney, and he's like considered the like an expert, like one of the like world's expert on John Cassavetes and like American independent film. And he's very much was like he kind of didn't like me actually. I think we butt heads a lot. We didn't like each other, but he was very like he was, I think, a godsend because he was so much about like anti-establishment filmmaking and like making shit your own way and you know, John Cassavetes, if you guys don't know either, is like the king of that. Like he's like the originator, like people call him the godfather of like American independent film. And he really was like throughout the 70s and stuff, in the 60s and 70s and in the 80s as well. But you know, making really incredible films. And he was an actor by trade, so he would get paid to act. He's in movies like, you know, Rosemary's Baby, The Dirty Dozen. So he was a big actor, and he would get, and so was his wife, Jenna Rollins, and they would get paid to act, but then he would take that money and he would like write and fund his own movies and make stuff with his friends. It was like a lot of his, he would just write stuff for his wife. He would write stuff for his friends like Peter Falk and Ben Gazzara. And that professor was also showing us stuff like mumblecore films, like Andrew Bujalski, who did like, I'm trying to think, Funny Haha and Mutual Appreciation. These are some like early 2000s films. And mumblecore was another kind of movement in American independent film of just like people just making shit for like nothing with you know, with their little like mini DV cameras and with friends. And mumblecore I think even gets its like name because it's, they used to call it like Slackavetties as well, because it was kind of like a mix of Cassavetes and Slacker, you know, like Richard Linklater's Slacker movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, I started watching more stuff like that and watching and you know, or you know, Kids and Gummo and Harmony,
Yeah,
and like that whole stuff. And so I also started like getting more interested in a sort of filmmaking that was a lot more kind of just like against the establishment and doing it in your own way. And and also some of them were like, you know, they would do it their own way, but then they would maybe get purchased or bought. So I was like, that's the way to do it. Like, do it your own way, 100% how you want,
yeah.
full creative control, and then maybe like you can sell it for distribution or something, and then it could like. So anyway, so because of that, I ended up like 2013. I graduated and decided like, okay, I'm not going to get a job in LA. I'm going to move back home. So moved back home, and I was like, I got to figure out freelance life. And yeah, that takes me to, yeah, let me know if I'm just like talking. So let me know if you guys have questions.
No, you're kind of
Oh,
like
good.
answering my questions as you go, and
Yeah.
like the questions I had for you. So that's good. But yeah, so you come back home to Long Island, and
How do you approach freelancing when you come home?
Yeah, it's a good question. I
Is it
guess
like a matter of networking with people you had met at school, or
yeah, so I didn't know many people from school who came back here, but it was definitely I knew from going to that festival and just always in general, I've been like if there's one thing I'm good at, it's like networking. And I don't, you know, I don't think of it as networking. I think it was just like making friends and stuff.
yeah,
So I was like, I need to go back home. I was like, if I'm going to go back home, I need to like, I don't know anyone around there that's doing film. I was like, I need to like, I was like, I'm going to need to take some time to like meet people and go into the city and maybe go out east and like just start like setting down like roots and stuff like that. And the first thing that was helpful was so that internship in 2012, that internship was through a program which is now unfortunately not running anymore, but it was called Creative Minds, or the Creative Mind Group. And Creative Mind Group was like a non-profit organization that whose mission was to set up like college-aged kids with internships at film festivals. And so that's like who set me up with that internship in 2012. But the cool thing, which I realized like the next year, was like, I was like, okay, I don't want to work in the industry. I don't want to go to LA and be an assistant. I don't want to like do all this stuff. I was like, but I want to keep going to film festivals. I want to like network and meet people. And like, that's the way to do it. And like the festivals are like where you just get all, and like, I met like some crazy people in 2012, remember? And obviously like, what you also realize is like you meet these people, but you have nothing to offer them because you're just a kid. You're just like a little, but it's like, oh, I was like, I want to keep going to festivals so that as my experience gets better and as I learn more, I'm, you know, going here with these people and like growing with them and whatever. So I was like, I need to figure out a way to keep going to film festivals. So in my head, I was like, I should keep going back with this program. And so in 2013, I went back as like, it was kind of like a camp counselor. Like I was just helping out other kids my age, but I started realizing like they had a video guy, and I think he was trying to like go on his way out, or he needed help, I think it was. So I just started being like trying to figure out how to help him, and then they started branching out. They only did Cannes, and they started doing, I think, the Toronto Film Festival. And I remember I took a bus all the way. It's like crazy because now I'm remembering, like, I think I had just graduated, so I think I took a bus all the way up to Toronto and just like crashed with somebody on like in their hotel, and I like became friendly with the video guy. I was like trying to help him out with everything and like assist him with stuff. So then the next time they started hiring me to do video, and they wanted me to kind of replace him. So then by 2014, I started going to Cannes to do video. So now it was cool because like they're a nonprofit, they don't have much money. I wasn't doing much stuff, but like while I'm working sort of odd jobs and trying to like figure it out at home, like I can now come back and be like, oh, I did this video work at the Cannes Film Festival, and like show them this like event video and sort of corporate style videos I did. And so that was like kind of helpful, where it was like kind of, I could pretend to be like a lot more experienced than I really was, where it was like I was going over there in a capacity that was like helping college aged kids and kids who were probably like my age, you know, some of them were grad students, some of them were older. So I was like mentoring these kids and also doing corporate like style video. And then that branched out into the cool thing was like, so the other thing is like, so, and like for me, I'm probably going to go on a little bit of a tangent about this program, but this program was like kind of what set me up in a lot of different ways, Creative Mind Group. And it was like, they were super cool because what I came to find out was, one, the guy who was running it also had like a really cool, like sort of just DIY sort of ethics that he came from. And he was like, he had come from he had grown up in like South Central LA, like Inglewood, and had grown up like more like harder. And he went to like Howard University, which is like historic Black college. And he had got an internship when he was in school at the Cannes Film Festival. He had gotten it's called like the American Pavilion, and this internship like touts itself as like, you know, I think Spike Jonze went through there, Michael Moore went through there, and you pay like a ton of money to go there. And he went, and what he found out was like the American Pavilion is basically like a little pavilion. Like each pavilion, each kind of country has their own little pavilion where they're showing different international film, and they're trying to push their own country and stuff. America is the only one that has a ginormous pavilion with like a restaurant in it, and it's the only one that you have to pay, you got to pay to get in and stuff. It's like very obviously like American, very capitalistic.
Sure.
But anyway, he found out that his like internship, quote unquote, was just working as a busboy at the restaurant. So he paid like $4,000 or like $3,000 or whatever it was at the time, like 24, and he was just free labor for like whatever 12 hours a day. They wouldn't even give you lunch; you had to pay for your own lunch at the restaurant and shit like that. And he was like, "What?" And he was like, "What the fuck is this?" So like, anyway, he tried to make the best of it. He's like 24. He goes back the next year, and this time he has a short film at the festival, and he's like trying to be like, "Hey, like I'm an alumni of the program. Can I be a part of this? Can I like get some like group rates or hotel rates? I know you guys have like a ton of people you could bring out here. Maybe like I can come through as an alumni and like you can help me with a hotel rate." They didn't want to help him at all. And then I think he wanted to go in to like grab food one day. And that was like the year they started making you pay to get in. And he and his friend, it was like he and another friend, they were like super pissed. And I remember the origin story. They were like 24 years old or something. They're like, we're going to pay to go in, but we're going to make a huge scene, and we're going to tell everyone we're doing our own thing. We're going to start like, so anyway, that was like years before I'd ever gotten to this program. Right. So I come to find out that like his program, he made almost directly as a fuck you to like the American Pavilion program. And like, he was like, I'm going to make so much of a better internship program. And this was maybe like, I don't know, 2006, 2008. So he had been like building it and growing it, but he was still a young dude. He was like in his maybe early 30s when I met him. I was like in my early 20s. So he had been growing this program. And by the time I got there, there was almost like 250. Yeah, I think it was like 200 to 250 students from around mostly the US, but almost different parts of the world as well who were coming. And he had set up all different he had set up all these partnerships with these different companies where you could go intern with them and shit like that. So it was super exciting and super like inspiring and stuff. But that's all to say, he was basically doing it almost like under the um he was kind of doing it like without the Cannes Film Festival's permission. And then the Cannes Film Festival had like been trying to get him to stop and like cease and desist and like all this stuff. And so like it was cool. And that's like kind of what made me feel like more kind of like I liked it and I liked him and I wanted to work with him and build it. And then so this is all to say by 2015, he finally kind of like legitimized it. And they finally were like, okay, we'll accept you. You can be a part of like the Cannes Film Festival. Like we see now, like you have like dozens of companies who vouch for you and say you're like a good company, and like hundreds of like past students who say like they really like what you're doing. But one of the things that they said were like, we'll work with you guys. They're like, but we don't have any video work and we really like your videos. They're like, so we have to like, they did a barter. They're like, if you do our video work for free, and there was like a few other, I think, stipulations, like then we can work together and have like an official partnership. So he was like, okay, perfect. And at the time, they were looking at the other guys' videos, and I had helped him a little bit with it, but it was definitely more the other dudes. But I was sort of now coming into a point where I was going to be doing it. So it was like, it was cool because like I was only like 23 and I started doing a lot of like the official sort of corporate video work for the Cannes Film Festival. And I was like filming panels, I was filming events, I was filming like all this crazy shit. It was too much work, honestly. I was like, I almost died, but it was like, it was cool because it just thrusted me into this thing because of like that kind of like moving up with that sort of that program that had sort of done things their own way. And then I kind of came to start doing corporate stuff. So then those corporate videos also, I think, kind of helped me. Like when I'd come back home, I was like picking up odd jobs, but then it was like, you know, you'd meet someone at Cannes or something. So then maybe they'd hire you in New York or hire you whatever. Or like it was just kind of a good segue or like a good way to talk or like be like, oh, like look at this video I did at the Cannes Film Festival. And people were like, oh, what the fuck? Like you got flown out to like do something at Cannes, or you'd meet someone in New York and they're like, why are you out? Like, why are you here? Like, shouldn't they're like, usually they hire like local people. And it was like all because of that nonprofit. I was really there like mentoring students and doing other stuff. But I had also just sort of like right place, right time. Now I was doing video work for this festival. So that also turned into I started doing videos for Variety magazine at the Cannes Film Festival and then in New York and stuff like that. So I don't know. I was it's like weird. I don't really understand. My freelance life is really odd because I couldn't really tell you like the type of stuff I get or how or why. And it's not very good actually. It's like it's not very good that I can't tell you why because I need to figure out how to get more work. And I'm like really bad at like marketing myself and like everything I get it's just word of mouth, just like other people I've done work for and then they introduce me to someone and they so I've just survived off of that and I've just survived off of completely luckily freelance. Like I've never really had another real job. But I don't know, it's up and down. It's not the best. So I'm trying to make it more stable. And yeah.
So I know that cinematography kind of became your wheelhouse. And so how does one develop that skill and like what does it exactly entail for those who don't know?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So cinematography is basically all the visual stuff that you see on screen. So you know, you could also like on a smaller shoot, you would probably just be called a cameraman or something, or like a news shoot or something, right? But on a big film set or a music video or commercial, the cinematographer, also sometimes known as the director of photography, is actually like directing all the crew that isn't like with that is actually helping make the visuals. So like the director directs the actors and they have the vision, so they also direct you know, the director of photography. But the director of photography is actually like directs every other person basically. So like they're directing the gaffer, which does all the lighting, they're directing the grip that does like all the kind of the rigging and setting up of stuff. And there's different ways to get into that. So some people go through it like a ladder, kind of like climbing up the ladder, and you can be an assistant camera, like an AC, is what it's called. And there's like a second AC and a first AC. The second AC is the person who, like in the movies you see, who like claps, who does the slap board.
Yeah.
First AC is like more tech and like helping with the camera gear, and he's also pulling focus. And then the cinematographer sometimes is the actual camera operator. On bigger sets, the camera operator is another separate person. But yeah, you can kind of work your way up. The way I got it, which I think is actually a lot more common in these days, like the past, 15 years or so, is just kind of like shooting stuff and then people hire you. So like shooting really like smaller things. And I think I was lucky when I came about in a time when the Canon 5D like revolution started, and there was like little DSLR cameras were just now had really high quality, sensors, and you could film really like incredible stuff on like a consumer camera.
Mm-hmm.
And people who came before me were maybe like shooting on like what are some of those cameras, like the Panasonic HVX and stuff like that. Like those were what a lot of like sports stuff is shot on. Like a lot of the classic skate videos I grew up on are shot on that. So, and then even earlier it's like film, so but basically what I'm saying is like I came in at a good time when technology had sort of caught up and you could buy a consumer camera. So one of the first things I did, we had little DSLR type cameras at school, and I saved up and bought myself a little camera. So I had that. And then I bought an even better one when I graduated school. And it was still just a little DSLR. It was a Canon 60. And I had one good lens for it. And I started shooting a lot of. So after Sync, I shot a few other short films. Anyway, I can get into that stuff later, but I shot a few different short films. And I was shooting my own stuff just out of necessity, just because like I didn't have anyone else to shoot it. And I tried on Sync actually to have a friend sort of be the cinematographer, and it didn't really work out. And I was just like shooting it my own way. And like I said earlier, I've never been a really technological person, but I like knew what I wanted, and I wanted to like focus on the actors and focus on the story. So I just started shooting my own stuff. And then from that, people started seeing some of my shorts, and not a lot because I would never submit them, like, which is, I don't know, maybe I should have submitted them, but people here and there would see me and then they'd start hiring me. So trying to think, the first thing that I ever got hired for, like legitimately, that wasn't that festival, in 2014. So I graduated college early. So like the year of 2013 to 2014, which should have been my senior year, I was like working odd jobs and like trying to like network with people. My first job actually was out of college. My friend Juba got me. Shout out to Juba. I worked at Firetowns College. He was working in the kitchen, so I just worked in the kitchen, and I was like, on weekends I would do that, and it was sort of funny because I remember like I was serving like film kids like food, but I was like trying to like do a film, and like so no one probably knew I was like myself like trying to do a film career, and like I had just come from the Cannes Film Festival and stuff. But I remember that being kind of funny and ironic. And Juba thinks I was a really bad worker. I know that. So sorry, Juba. And anyway, that was one of my first jobs. Towards the end of that year, I think I ended up leaving that job like almost before the year was out. And I got into this program. It was like Stony Brook was just starting it, and it was like this master's program with Christine Vachon and Killer Films. So Christine Vachon is she's a big like legendary indie producer. She's produced Kids, she produced Boys Don't Cry, she produces all of Todd Haynes' movies like Carol, and I can't think of any Todd Haynes movies off the top right now apart from Carol. But
I know he did that Velvet Underground documentary, but
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he loves the Velvet. He loves that like time. Oh, Velvet Goldmine, did he? No. But anyway, Christine Killer Films have done a ton of like indie sort of New York films, and Stony Brook was starting this program with her. So I was like, oh damn, like I wanna get to know them and kind of be in their circle. So I got into that program, and I didn't want to do a master's because I was like in so much debt, and I was like, I do not want to do another master's. But they had one class where you took, it was like from January to May, you did a bunch of what's it called? You did a bunch of like lectures. It was like a once a week thing, and they bring in different producers and ads and like ads and assistant director, like different crew members, and they would, and because of Christine Vachon's connections, it was really cool. You actually had people come and talk to us, and our class was tiny. It was like 11 people or something. So that was really cool. So you actually like, that was another sort of like introduction to like how the industry works and stuff. And then at the end of that, in the summer, you would make a short film, and we were only given like 12 hours to film a short film and like 5 days to edit. And I remember I was one of the ones who had like the most experience shooting. So I remember I kept them being, and like they were like, everyone has to like, what was it, like everyone has to what do you call it, like kind of exchange, like kind of like switch roles on each person's film, right? So like one person would, if you're gonna, when you direct yours, somebody else DPs yours, and when you are the writer on one or whatever, so like it all kind of exchanged like that. And they knew that I was going to be one of the main cinematographers because I had experience. So I shot a bunch of other people's shorts, and then I kept on being like, hey, can I shoot my own? And they're like, no, it doesn't work like that. And then I was scheduled, luckily, like to be like the final one to film. And I shot, since I'm not a technological person, I'm just like, get shit done, just focus on the story. I got everyone done like on time or before time. So they're really impressed. They're like, oh, okay, like you're actually an efficient shooter. So they let me like DP my own short film. And that was the first time I got a job. So like we screened it, and we did like a little screening for it at the end of the thing, and everyone really liked my film. It was a little more like experimental and like different. That one's called A Lonely Hymn. If anyone wants to see it, I can send a link to it. I don't have it up anywhere. I have like a trailer of it. And that one was like interesting too, because it was like it was loosely based off of my like childhood upbringing, where my mom used to take me to clean houses when I was little out east, and we were filming this thing out east in the Hamptons. So like I needed to write a short about the Hamptons, and like to me, I was like, that's the only thing I can think of, is like, and I wanted to, even with sync, kind of like there's always an interest in like yeah, like class and like the contrasts of that, but like trying to show more like human and like poetic side of it. So it was cool because I cast like a real family, and I cast like a real mother, a real like Ecuadorian family, and it was like a mother and her 2 kids, and one of them was like 5 and one of them was like 12, and it was very like similar to like how me and my brother like grew up and stuff. So I did a short with them, and then I made it a little more. My mom passed in 2012 when I was like 19, so that that was like 2 years after that. So I was still kind of dealing a lot with that. And that movie, in like kind of more experimental ways, not very directly, was kind of explored some of those ideas of loss and grief and stuff like that. So I anyway, I shot it, and one of the people at the screening was this guy Tony Gerber, and he's a director producer. He's done a lot of Nat Geo stuff, and he's done a lot of other features as well, feature docs that like done well at Sundance and all that. But he saw the short, and he was really sweet. He was like the first person in my life that wasn't like a friend, that kind of was really like inspiring and motivating, and being like, wow, like you shoot really well, you shoot really great, and like got my info, and he's like, he wanted to hire me for something. So like a few months later, he hired me for this thing that he was doing, like a little doc thing, and then later he hired me for a Nat Geo thing. And the Nat Geo thing was like, it was in Pennsylvania somewhere, and it was like really low budget. It wasn't like a cool like travel to Africa thing, but it was still like my first real job with a real, through a real kind of like freelance company, and like a real rate and stuff. And I remember being like, holy shit, like I'm never gonna pay this well in my life. And I think he also thought I was a lot older, and that was what was, I think, helpful for me too when I was young. Is like I always had a really big beard, and I grew it really big even when I was younger. So like people just thought I was a lot older, and they would hire me for more stuff. But anyway, that
You're gonna have to
that
start shaving later in life to look younger.
I know, yeah, exactly. But yeah, sorry, that was the first time I ever became kind of like camera operator, cinematographer for someone else that wasn't my own stuff, right? And then
Yeah.
started getting a little bit more, and I started realizing like, and honestly, I'm still at the point where cinematography isn't my main gig. I probably get a balance of like more corporate shoots. I get like interview type shoots, corporate event type shoots. Sometimes I'm just a cinematographer on like a music video, sometimes on a commercial. I want cinematography to be like get more of that, because cinematography, what I started to realize too, at least in the commercial world, and I haven't gotten that many commercial gigs. I've gotten a few. In commercials, like it can be really well paid. And I started realizing like other people who work at commercial agencies and stuff telling me that like sometimes a cinematographer is the person who's like doing the best and stuff like financially in life, because they don't get paid as well as a director, but they often get paid somewhat close in rate. And usually you're there for like, you may only be there for a day or two, whereas a director is like, they get paid better, but they might be on the project for like months. They might be like seeing it in pre-production and post-production. And also I always had a trouble with like, similar to like, I think, these sort of like punk ethics and stuff I grew up with. Like I never wanted to direct a commercial really. I just thought it was like kind of, it just didn't like gel with me. And I also felt like it would be like shitty to like spend so much time directing something and then they would just kind of take it from you and like make it its own thing.
Yeah.
Whereas cinematography, I started getting hired for, and I kind of fell into it. And it also, for me, became like what's the word for it? Like I had like enough sort of detachment from it for me to be okay with like, okay, it's not my name, it's not my directing thing, I'm just doing the visuals. So like I don't want to like direct some like shitty commercial about like selling some product. And like, everyone has their sort of what they can tolerate. Like, but to me, I'm like, okay, like I'm okay if like I'm just hired to do the visuals. I made it look good. And it's not it's not like I didn't, so like I don't know, I'm still a part of it, right? I'm still a part of the system, I guess. But in my head, that was like enough for me to be like, okay, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with getting hired to do the visual aspect of it. And I can show people the visuals, and then I can take that money and go like put it into my own like personal work and stuff like that. So I'm a little more okay with that. And I want to get more cinematography commercial work, because it's like yeah, like I said before, you can kind of get more work doing it too. Like sometimes a director's on one project for weeks, whereas like the cinematographer's already shot like a dozen projects, Yeah. So when you get to like a really high place with it, people are getting like flown around the country or flown around the world to just like DP some random commercial. So yeah, I'm not really there yet, but it'd be nice to kind of get there.
I was going to ask, how does documentary work differ from like narrative scripted work?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, I actually, so I probably haven't really shot much other people's narratives apart from like those shorts that I explained. But I don't think I've ever been hired like in a professional manner for like a narrative, maybe a short here and there, or like paid a small amount. But I've been hired a lot more for documentary, and I've shot my own narrative stuff a lot. And I shoot my own narrative in a very documentary way. And like, that's why I like documentary, and I like shooting documentary because it's like real people, real places. You have to be like, you only get, some depending, but typically you only get like one chance. It's like maybe like an event in a way like that, where you got to be like in the right place in the right time, set up and ready for it. And so yeah, that's like exciting to me, because you're like always thinking, you're always on your toes. And it's also a big part of it is making people comfortable who aren't comfortable being on camera, or who aren't actors, who aren't
Who've never been interviewed before or
Yeah.
spoken on camera. Yeah.
asking them the right questions, like making them just feel like good. Whereas, but narrative, I actually approach narrative in a very similar way. I like to shoot it in a documentary way, so that's why like a lot of the stuff I do is usually based around real people or based around non-actors in real locations. So, but I mean, the difference is like narrative typically is a lot more structured and a lot more crew members and a lot more like regimented, and
Yeah.
that's those are the aspects I don't like about film. I like the free form craziness. Like Harmony Korine has this quote, and I think he talks about like he likes films or he likes filmmaking in a way that's like you put all these sort of chemicals together and then it just starts to kind of like explode and then you capture it, and like that's the type of filmmaking I like, and that's why documentary, like I like shooting documentary a lot. So I'm hoping to get more doc. I haven't gotten as much as I'd like to, but that stuff is really, it doesn't pay as well as commercial. Um, but it's exciting. And also luckily commercial is now shooting in a more doc style because they want that sort of authenticity. So like a lot of the commercials people watch now are like branded documentaries where it's like,
Right.
you know, it's like it's kind of a thorny, weird ethical place because it's like they'll be filming some like underprivileged kid, and it's like it's some inspirational story, and at the end it's like Nike, and it's like wearing Nike shoes, and you're like, oh my god, like I just watched a Nike commercial,
Yeah.
and you
Also, pharmaceutical commercials too.
yeah,
Similar
yeah,
testimonials on
yeah,
somebody who's just obviously an actor and never took the drug in their life.
yeah, yeah, or sometimes it is like a real like that's what they're trying to do now. It's a real person, and it's like okay, but it's like weird because it's like oh, this is a real person, so it's more authentic, and it's like a tearjerker. But then you're also like, this is kind of exploitative too. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah. They're trying
this
to
is
make a
also,
buck off this person's
yeah,
suffering. Yeah.
yeah. So it's
Are
super weird.
are you by any chance a fan of John Wilson, or have you seen the How
Yeah, I
to of
love
John
John
Wilson?
Wilson.
But
Yeah, I haven't.
he's kind of the perfect mix of like weaving his own narrative into documentary footage he shot.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. John Wilson's really cool. We had some mutual friends, and like my one cool story is that I went to we saw Swiss Army Man together in 2015. Like me and a group of like he would never remember me, and like but we hung out like ate one day together, and then he like years later got that crazy HBO show. But I mean that's another sort of I'm talking about myself a lot, but if people want to hear cool stories, like that was what was cool about going to film festivals is like I would meet people and I'd be into their shit. Like I'd be like, oh, like I watched a short or watched whatever, and I'd like hang out or talk to them. And then later on, they would like blow up and do really well. So that was cool because one, it was kind of a little validating to my own taste. I was like, oh, like I liked this person, and then they like ended up doing well. But it was also like it made things tangible where I was like, oh, like this isn't that far off. Or like I like Chloe Zhao is one of them. She ended up winning best picture for Nomadland, best director and stuff like that, like back in 2019, 2020, I forget. But I met her at this thing called IFP. It's like independent feature project. Now it's called the Gotham, but it was like a sort of film incubator in Brooklyn. And it's the longest running film incubator. It's been around since like late 80s maybe, and tons of films have gone through it. Like everything from like Reservoir Dogs to Beasts of the Southern Wild and Moonlight. But anyway, it's like a bunch of filmmakers go there and they have like a script maybe, or they have a project in post production and they're looking for like funding to like finish it or distribution. And Chloe was there with Songs My Brother Taught Me, which is like our first film. And we hit it off and just talking about actually Harmony and stuff, Harmony and Terrence Malick. And there's a lot of people like that in my like. We didn't like hang out a ton, but there's other people too where like I became friendly with, or like we just talked about film, and then like 4 or 5 years later, they're like, they're doing really well and stuff, and they're like have their first feature out in theaters and stuff like that. Like the guy Reynaldo Green was another one. We used to see each other at festivals, and he's not a big name, but he's directed a few indies, but he directed King Richard, the one that got Will Smith to win his first Oscar, and then consequently slap Chris. but but that was cool because going to festivals also like would introduce me to people like that and just be like, oh wow, like, you know, if you keep working at it, like you can make it too one day. So that was cool.
So I guess that brings us to your present project, The Earth Belongs to Me.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how that came about and where you're at with that.
Yeah, so The Earth Belongs to Me. I've like written so much stuff on this on like the website and stuff. So I'm always like, it's always tough for me to start talking about it because it's like I've maybe almost overthought it. But
We could just read the website.
I know, I was thinking that too. Like I could just read
it off.
but basically the way this movie has been about, this movie is really, it's been almost like a decade in the making, and maybe even more so because it's like so much about how we grew up, me and my friends. But me and my friend Chris Kenny, the one that we did sing together, and after that we did a bunch of shorts after that. We did another one called Hush the Noise, we did another one called Someday My Prince Will Come. All of these are like unreleased, but basically we started to realize that we got along really well in terms of like complementing each other, where he was good in front of the camera acting and good at writing, and I was better at like kind of producing and cinematography, and then we would sort of co-direct. So this is a project with Chris Kenny, who's the co-director on it, and yeah, I can, let me just read this little synopsis. I feel like that would be a better way to do it. But here's the log line. So log line is just, you know, the first thing. So after having his house egged by the vicious Hergenhan clan, Chris and his two friends hatch up a revenge plot that leaves no one unscathed. So yeah, basically it's a film that it takes place in Lindenhurst completely. We don't name it in the movie, but it's completely Lindenhurst. I think we do actually maybe name it in the movie. We don't name it on the website. We just say Long Island, but Lindenhurst definitely comes up in the script a lot, I think. So it's all about it's how kind of we grew up in Lindenhurst. It's kind of like getting into hijinks and mischief. But it also centers all around a lot more of like masculinity and what does it mean to be a man, and male violence, and kind of like getting in over your head and sort of like disputes over territory and land. And in that way, it's like it's kind of like a larger sort of idea for just masculinity and humanity in a way. But also I think it's a really good way to like explore it in sort of adolescence, especially in sort of these subcultures of like hardcore and skateboarding. And you don't see it as much in this movie, but like graffiti, like me and my friend were talking about it a lot, Chris. And the movie is called The Earth Belongs to Me. And obviously there's a little bit of a maybe satirical idea in that, of like it being like the earth is mine, and how that's a little bit of like a, you could sort of say a colonialist sort of understanding of things. And we even kind of like go into sort of these more film essay moments of like you know, whose land is this, and was this like the indigenous people and stuff. And because a lot of it has to, it's kind of like what's the word for it, trying to think of the stuff, it's kind of like a Stand By Me mixed with like Place Beyond the Pines. So it revolves around a lot about like hanging out in the woods, and especially this area that we grew up with called Shipwreck. And that's why it was like interesting here you guys talk about the shoe and talk about all these areas.
Yeah.
Because we kind of had our own area that was similar, and the movie imagines it as a lot larger than it actually is. Like the kids get lost out there, then they have to come back. But basically we're talking about like the earth belongs to me, and this sort of idea that can kind of be maybe misinterpreted or satirical in a way of it being somewhat colonialist and like somewhat like manifest destiny, but how it's also, there's also something really empowering about that, in the same way that like, you know, like Nas singing about like, whose world is this? The world is mine. It's mine. It's mine. It's mine. And it's like, there's this empowering feeling of also being a kid and like being in the woods and like repurposing it for your own sort of purposes, and like that this is yours, you know, and that like you like put your tag up and like this is my spot, this is my place. And in skateboarding as well, where it's like we look at skateboarding as very we look at it in like a positive light where you're doing something very creative and you're repurposing like different aspects of like an old abandoned building or a place that's not being used or a stair set or whatever. But there's also obviously the flip side of it of like you're destroying public property sometimes and you're like getting into fights with like security guards or like so it's like
Yeah.
so we want to explore a little bit of everything, like the cross section of like this is something creative and exciting to be sort of trying to like find your identity, find your place, take claim on land, but also sort of the flip side of how that can become a little darker and become you can kind of get into sort of a blood feud with someone over something as simple as like this is my spot or like this is whatever. So the movie kind of goes into that because Chris is like the Chris character is in sort of a feud with like a group of friends, that group of another boy group another boyfriend. So like yeah, so I don't know, now I'm just rambling, but that let me know if there's I think that kind of covers. I'm looking at the website now again to be like, what else is in here? I should say.
My question is, where is Shipwreck? If you're willing to divulge that.
So I don't mind divulging to you guys maybe off camera, but me and Chris are somewhat worried of
it still exists.
Yeah, so it still exists, and the cool thing is it actually. So we've been like location scouting and checking it out for years now at this point, like since like, I don't know, maybe 2016, 2017, like going back and forth to it. And within that time, we've seen it like different iterations of it. And like, we're not a part of it. It's just other kids, obviously, like young high school kids. And the cool thing is like, we saw it sort of dead. Now we see it kind of coming back and like stronger than ever. And like our fear is like, we don't want it to get out and then we like destroy some high school kids like place, like the town finds out about it and then they're like develop it or something like that. And it's
is this not in Lindenhurst?
It's like on the border, but it is in Lindenhurst. It's definitely in Lindenhurst.
We've talked a whole lot about, especially back when we were growing up, how many empty lots there were. And there would always be some kid building like a BMX ramp or,
dirt hills everywhere.
Dirt hills, yeah. But a lot of that's been built over,
Exactly. And that's exactly what this spot is. It was a BMX ramps area and it's still sort of used for that. And it's interesting because like we grew up there. The one that I remember, I don't know if you guys had a name for it, but it was like near like Fireman's Pavilion and like kind of like going to Taco Bell and
yes.
Yeah.
And yes, the dirt hills, but between our friend Chris Schaefer, whatever, we're dropping his name, between like Frank Street and Fireman's Park, that little area there, there's houses now. Yeah.
It's like some condos or something.
Yeah.
And I didn't go there, but my friend grew up going to Zahn's Park a lot too, and like that area was
same. I grew up in North Lindenhurst, same thing.
Yeah. So it's like, and that's what's cool about like I remember hearing the podcast like that. There's such a deep history of that, and that like that's being lost, I think, in Lindenhurst. And it's nice to see that like this place actually still, it might be like one of the few or maybe one of the only places. I mean, there's other small spots too, but that still exists. And so I just don't want to divulge it because it's like we might like ruin some kids spot or something.
We need to protect it at all costs.
I know. Yeah.
Cool. So how far along are you in the production?
So we've been we're hoping to shoot next summer and fall.
Okay.
We keep going back and basically took a long time because we just kept on doing different drafts and also just getting more experience and realizing like, let's push this back. We're not prepared or ready just yet. Because this is going to be like, also if it wasn't clear maybe from the start, this is going to be like, a full feature length movie.
Okay.
And it's very ambitious. It's like the script is almost like 200 pages long. Like the movie's probably going to be like 2.5 hours long. It's sort of like an epic, sort of similar to Place Beyond the Pines. It kind of spans It jumps from the main plot of the film takes place in 3 days, but it jumps to different aspects of like Chris's father and uncle, and talking about more familial things and kind of like autobiographical elements and documentary elements. So it's kind of really overambitious in a lot of ways, and the primary way it's very overambitious in is how much like cast there is. So the main three characters are Chris, G Funk, and Joe, who are like friends that I've been talking about for a while, and we wrote it around them. We wrote it with their names, and I mean, a big aspect, honestly, that we're starting to think about is they're the main characters, and we've been rehearsing with them on and off like for months now, and I think they're like amazing. I think they're perfect for it. There is some hesitancy, from Chris's side that, the conversation is starting to come up of like, are they too old now? Like, are they going to pass for this age? And I think they do. And to me, like, the conversation is like, you don't have to look like 17-year-olds. You just have to look like a few years younger, like 25-year-olds or 20, because like every high school movie ever is like, it's like you just buy it. And it's like, oh, that guy's like probably 25, but you just end up like going with it because it ends up being like.
Also, if you don't put actual 17-year-olds in it, no one's, none the wiser to everyone.
Yeah, you can't compare. Exactly. Exactly. So that's why I'm hoping that, I think we'll be okay. But anyway, that's one conversation we're starting to have, and, to figure out what we should do if we do feel like they're not going to pass. I look a lot older. I think they look younger.
Let's get a good makeup artist.
Yeah, we've actually been talking to makeup artists, and I've been like exploring like, now there's like even AI and stuff where you can make people look younger. So I'm like, should we even do tests with that and stuff? Yeah, I think it'll be okay, especially if we. So I think, like you said, like Jan said, if we cast around it, and like if everyone. So, anyways, like the movie has the craziest thing about it, and Chris is the main writer on this. I'm like really been directing him and always give him notes and stuff like that. And I've always basically just just let it go wild, and like we'll bring it back if we need to and stuff. But the craziest thing about this all is that there's 50 different speaking parts in the movie. There's like, and like no movie has like 50 people, like 50 roles. So, and some of them are bit parts, some of them are small, but there's so many people, and we want to do it in a way that it's all like real people from like the Long Island community, who are from like, come from the same world as us, like from skateboarding and punk and hardcore or whatever. So we're like, so it's like, I'm just been freaking out, like, holy fuck, like we have way too many people and way too many roles in this, and like, how are we going to fill them up? And to me, the best way to do it is like, probably not, like you said, like get real high school kids, but get kids who are a little older, like in their 20s, maybe people who can even pass in their 30s and stuff, and just like populate the film with like everyone who looks sort of similar age. And, then I think it'll be okay and stuff too. And I think it'll be cool because a lot of people will be, they know that world, they know that scene, they know how to talk and stuff, and they'll be friends and stuff. So the toughest thing though is like, we need to reach out to those people. And I'm very bad at like, I've been trying to, but I haven't done very well. Like I need to like make flyers and like go to different places. Like I've talked to Ryan Cook at 27A. I mentioned it to Chris Smith as well at Ruby So's, and they were like, yeah, like you can put flyers up here and stuff like that. So I'm going to start doing that. And I was talking to Hugo actually, and he was saying that he would like be down to help as well. But the biggest thing right now is like trying to spread the word and do flyers and do stuff, because like we just need as many people to audition as possible. And what we're hoping to do is like, maybe we do casting for. So I was talking to Baca as well the past year, Babylon Arts Council. It's like they have a spot on Wellwood, actually, like right near where the Black Forest Bakery used to be. So I've been talking there, and one of the guys there, Jason Jenkins, is also really in the hardcore scene and is super cool. And he works there, and he's in some bands. He's in Ennui, and he's got his own sort of like hardcore projects as well. And but anyway, we were gonna like book that spot and try to do auditions in person, but just for like, it didn't make sense for us not having much of a budget and much money to like. And I was thinking like, oh, should we book it for like weeks and weeks on end and bring tons of people through? And now we're thinking about like we might do first like Zoom and talk to people, meet people in person, and then if we like think they're good, then we'll book a spot and like bring a bunch of people to Baca for like an audition night or something like that. But yeah, the biggest thing is like we want as many people to sort of apply as possible, and come one, come all, and like even if you think you may not have a part for it, like maybe you think you're too old or whatever, it's like there may be some part. There are a few older roles, so like we may have a part for you guys. But yeah, that's why I appreciate you guys asking me to do this as well, because this is like perfect timing where I'm like, I need to spread the word, I need to talk about this movie, and and hopefully people will yeah. So if you go to the website earthbelongstome.com/casting call, or you just go and you hit casting call, it actually tells you what to do, and you submit to the earth belongs to me film@gmail.com. You do a subject line EBTM casting, and yeah, it basically says it all there on the website, but like you just put your name, age, a photo of yourself. So I've been kind of like trying to go around and like tell people about it little by little, but it'll definitely be helpful to sort of like maybe get more partners, or get someone like Hugo who has like built really awesome stuff with like the perks department and everything else he does would be like an awesome collaborator. So we were talking the other day, and it's like he's been someone really cool that I just met within the past year, or even the past few months, I guess. But like we have, I think, really similar like kind of personality type, and we're both trying to do creative stuff. And he's been really sweet, and he hired me on this like commercial photo gig the other day, and we both kind of like were really happy working together on it, and it's been really cool. So, and he's trying to build stuff himself, obviously, with like all the stuff he's throwing. So the Great All Nighter, I'm going to help him film that and do photos for that and stuff too. So that'll be cool. I'll be there.
And I'll be there as the DJ. So
nice. Perfect.
We'll be selling some podcast swag too.
Nice.
So I guess winding down, we'll ask you our closing question. If you could describe Lindenhurst to somebody who's never been there, what would you tell them?
So really tight-knit, small community, has like a really strong sort of weirdo DIY culture to it. And and it's got its ups and downs. It's got like some of the most beautiful, kind people. It's also got some of its ugly side of like racism and stuff like that you see sometimes. But
yeah,
I don't know. But I love it, and I think I definitely wouldn't like want to be anywhere else. I think for sure.
theearthbelongstome.com. Go visit. Yep. Sign up. All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, man. Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Long live the bench.